Hello, and welcome to the Practice Forward podcast. I'm your host, Owen Bush, and today we are joined by Ric Stott. Ric Stott is the founder of Stott Architecture, a Southampton-based firm known for its environmentally high-performance design. With roots in carpentry and over 40 years in practice, Stott blends technical precision with emotional resonance, evident in projects like Suffolk County's first LEED Platinum carbon neutral home. His work emphasizes sustainability, craft, and the power of architecture to elevate everyday life. Hey, Ric, good to see you.
Hey.
Thanks for coming today.
You're welcome. That sounds like a pretty good intro. Thanks, Owen.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It sounds like we've had quite a career and a lot to go over here. Just a quick note, today the Practice Forward podcast is sponsored by Scandaplan. Scandaplan is a full-service LiDAR to BIM firm delivering precise construction-ready documentation for existing buildings. With over 1,000 projects completed, their in-house team produces millimeter-accurate point clouds and tailored CAD BIM models across architecture, MEP, structural, and landscape disciplines. Known for their rigorous quality control and adaptive reuse expertise, Scandaplan helps AEC firms focus on design by transforming complex spaces into reliable models. Very good. Okay, so Ric, how are you doing today? Are you out in the Hamptons?
I am. I'm in Hampton Bays, about a half a mile from the ocean.
Oh, very nice. And you know, it's we do a lot of work out there with Scandaplan, and spend a lot of time. I wish I was scanning more often. I'd be out in the Hamptons almost as much as you are. So let's get into this. So you're a lead architect and do a lot of work with sustainability. Is that often with new construction, or do you do this with existing buildings?
I do sustainability projects for existing buildings, but more often they're new buildings. Existing buildings are harder to get LEED certified for a number of reasons.
So you've described sustainability not as a layer, but a baseline. And so where does that mindset originate from you?
Oh, that's a good question. It actually originates from the oil embargo of 1974. That's when I first became aware that oil, fossil-based fuels, and fossil fuel-based energy rather, is a big problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many listeners are savvy about 1974, but there was an oil shortage due to an embargo, and it was almost impossible to get gasoline. At the time, I was living in California, and there were lines a half a mile long people waiting to get gasoline. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I got interested in solar energy right away. I was at the time not studying architecture. I was studying ceramics at the University of Southern California.
Wow. And
I had a team of sort of hippie pottery friends, and some of them were engineers and artists, and some were architects. And we decided that we'd try and create a solar energy kiln, a kiln that would fire pottery to over 2,400 degrees. And I was given a big parabolic mirror by one of my professors here on Long Island. And I brought that out to California, and we started experimenting with it, and actually did fire a very tiny piece of pottery to 2,400 degrees. But that's how I got into it. And at the time, I didn't even know how to spell architecture, really. And didn't go to architecture school for another 7 years. So I had a couple of 3 or 4 different career starts: airline pilot, potter, leather crafts, carpentry, all trades in the carpentry, from electrical to roofing, and finally got into went to architecture school because the architect I was working for told me he thought I had a real talent for design and construction, and make a great architect.
Really? And then you were inspired because you felt as if the architecture field could make more of a difference in sustainability.
Well, I was, yes, partly. One part of that equation is that at the time I started architecture school, I was 30 years old. I had a 2-year-old son, and I was framing houses and coming home every day going, this is starting to hurt. I wonder if there's anything else I can be doing in the construction industry that won't hurt me so much at the end of the day. And so that's sort of how it all played out. And my architect friend was also a mentor and inspired me to go to school. So that's what I did.
Amazing. And then what happened to you along your way before you founded your own practice?
I had to do my 3-year internship, which is required for national registration. And I came back to the East Coast because I graduated from Cal Poly right into a recession. There was not much work there. I had a couple of offers for big firms in LA. I didn't really want to design high rises. I was more of a local country guy.
Yeah.
So I moved back to the East Coast, where I found a job, and my first wife wanted to go to Yale Art School. She had graduated from a great school in California, so we thought she'd get in, moved to Connecticut, got a job. She didn't get in. Then we moved to Long Island. And that's kind of a long, boring story. But yeah, I did my internship, moved to Long Island, worked for a residential architecture for about 2.5 more years, and passed my exams and opened my office right away. I started out with a couple of clients that I'm still friends with, renovated their homes.
Amazing.
Always with sustainability in mind, but it was before LEED was a program or even an acronym.
Right.
So nobody knew anything about LEED. We were just working on being as efficient as we could.
Well, so it's like me. I think you're kind of a reformed artist, and then but also it's funny. I did ScandaPlan before I even realized that it was kind of a form of right livelihood in terms of helping buildings to be more efficient and for buildings to be saved and adapted and reused, etc.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about the HGA House. So the HGA House rebuild, you can check out the HGA House on Ric's website. Sorry, I didn't mention this. It is stottarchitecture.com, STOTT. So the HGA House is it's not just functional, it achieves carbon neutrality, right?
That's correct. And
so
go ahead.
Well, I just was there something that shifted for you in the approach to this project?
Yeah, to be honest, it was the construction manager who really pushed the whole project team towards carbon neutrality. He was in the middle of writing a book on carbon neutral operations of all sorts. But Hampton HGA stands for Hampton's Green Alliance. Okay. And that project came about because a friend of mine's home burned, basically destroyed the house from a fire in the boiler room in the basement. It went up through the kitchen, took the kitchen out, and pretty much the rest of the house as well. By the time the firefighters got done with it, it was on a freezing cold day in the winter, so it all turned to ice. The family was devastated. The kids were destroyed. Wow. And we decided to turn it into a positive experience.
Yeah, so, that's a heroic story there.
Yeah. So the owner and I contacted a general contractor on the East End And his company is Telemark Construction. His name is Frank Deline, the owner, the Deline brothers, Roy and Frank, and they were heavily involved into sustainable concepts and especially carbon. And they were the ones who brought the carbon neutrality to the table. And we did a lot of work towards trying to document the carbon, our carbon footprints, each of our carbon footprints, from me to the owners to the subcontractors, which took some work. We had to document how much we drove to the job site, what kind of car we had.
Oh, really? So you're documenting all the construction costs as well?
Exactly, and where materials came from, because by that time it was indeed a LEED certified project. So we had to identify everything.
Wow.
And of course, use local materials where we could, use renewable and sustainable materials where we could, recyclable materials. And everyone was on board towards that goal. And that's what I like the best about the LEED program, is it puts everyone on the same team.
Yeah.
The owner, the architect, the contractor on the same team. But there's also a sense of sportsmanship, if you want to use that word, or camaraderie, teamwork with all the subs too. And that's really unusual, because everybody pays a little bit more attention when they know a third party's looking over their shoulder.
Yeah.
And everyone sort of pitches in to do a better job. And that's the best thing that I think, the best advantage to the LEED program, even over and above the sustainability aspects. You get a product, the owner gets a product that's over and above in quality and sustainability.
Yeah. So, I mean, in order to accomplish this, you employed a whole variety of things, right? So there's photovoltaic solar panels, there's solar water heating, geothermal pump, and rainwater harvesting. So it's like it's got a whole spectrum of approaches here.
One thing we did not use on that home was rainwater harvesting.
Okay.
That turned out to be a little bit more difficult. We certainly talked about it. We talked about gray water harvesting also, which turned out to be kind of out of scope for a small house.
Right.
The original house, by the way, was 3,000 square feet. We added 1,500 square feet to it in the process of renovating from the fire damage. So they ended up with a 4,500 square foot house. And the utility bills came out being less than half of what they were when it was only a third that size.
Wow.
2/3 that size.
Incredible.
So,
wow.
So everyone was certainly happy with the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, these are the kind of projects we love to champion here with ScandaPlan. So, when you're embedding systems like geothermal or rainwater, gray water harvesting, how do you decide what to integrate versus what to leave out? I imagine a lot of it is site specific, or
yes, a lot of it is site specific. A lot of it's dollar specific. If the return on investment isn't there, neither is that aspect of the project. Or if the owner's not into it.
Right.
Some owners just can't handle the idea of putting solar panels on their roof, even if they're integrated. And that's one of the things that I'm very conscious of, is what solar energy looks like. I really, really don't like solar panels on top of a roof. I like them integrated into a roof that's metal, so that the panels fit between the standing seams. There's a couple of other roof styles around, one called Sun Style now, that looks like big European style tiles in a diamond shape rather than a tile shape.
Yeah. It's very classy. It has a very classical look, what I'm seeing.
Very classical and very cool look. But they're expensive.
Yeah, I bet.
I finished the renovation on my house. In fact, it's almost finished. And I ended up having to put solar panels on my new asphalt roof, just for the fact that I couldn't afford to really do the roof I wanted. It would have cost 3 times as much and performed as well, but not any better. So I had to make the trade-off. I'm an architect, and contrary to what most people believe, architects are not the highest paid professionals on the planet. So everything has to be plugged into the equation of what the client's budget is,
Sure.
what the aesthetics are, what the performance is expected, and the whole sustainability goal of the project, which we talk about right from the very first day.
Yeah. So you did a renovation to the Suffolk Theater where you integrated solar as well. So tell me about that process. How'd you? It has an Art Deco aesthetic. So how did you kind of weigh these solar ready additions against that?
That's a good question too. And just for clarity, that project is not built yet. The
Okay.
images you see on the website are 3D real, but it's not built.
Okay.
And the interior was all renovated. I did the interior renovation, and we finished that and opened that building, opened the new theater, which was originally built in 1933 as a Deco style brick front theater. It was really nice, and the interior was fabulous. So doing that renovation was a lot of fun. We took 940 seats out of there, terraced the floor, and built a terrace floor with tables and chairs.
Mm-hmm.
We put a restaurant in the basement, 2 big bars in the theater, one in the mezzanine and one on the back of the first floor. And it's a rocking place to go to. They do live performances of all kinds of rock and roll cover bands. And what we're doing now is planning an addition, a 32,000 square foot addition for the back.
Okay.
Now, the solar aspect of it is on the roof, and because it's on the top of the 5th floor, it'll be invisible. It's set
Right.
back from the roof edges and tilted panels towards the south, and you just won't be able to see them. And that's the only reason we got it past the Architecture Review Board in Riverhead.
Because of the solar?
Because you couldn't see them.
Oh yeah, exactly. Right.
If there's nothing to see, there's nothing to complain about.
Sure.
So everyone likes that idea.
Of course.
And that sort of ties back into integrated solar and having ugly roof panels on your house or
Right.
building.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you align when you're with a client? So, of course, your client's going to have aesthetic desires or historic preservation desires for their kind of reuse projects, or so how do you align those with these kind of performance-driven envelope decisions?
Pretty much a back and forth discussion about what the client's goals are and how important sustainability is to them, how important efficiency is to them.
Yeah.
I like to use real life examples. One is the HGA House having a utility bill, increasing the house by 1/3 and cutting the utility bill by more than half. That's pretty impressive.
Sure.
On my own house, which is an 800 square foot addition to 1,000 square foot house, an old 1948 cottage, which was pretty tough to make airtight and thermally performing. I got my first electric bill when everything was tied in and integrated for last month was $18.
Uh-huh.
And that includes charging my car.
Yeah. Wow.
So I'm pleased with that. And if I can live out my next 10 years of where I think I'll be working with an $18 a month utility bill, that includes everything: heating, cooling, electrical, the car. I'll be a happy camper.
That's incredible.
So the conversation, goes something like this. how interested are you in sustainability and efficiency? Do you want a house that will perform as high as possible, or what are your goals? What do you want to see for your electric bills? What are they now? I usually get some idea of where we can go with them. Some properties just aren't set up for super efficient thermal or photovoltaics or hot water thermal, which means solar hot water, or any of those things. So we have to begin by making the house as tight and as efficient as we can. And then the mechanical systems that heat and cool it also need to be considered very carefully.
Right. Well, it seems like you're doing a lot of, even as a really small firm, you're doing a lot of innovative things with sustainability. And I like this idea that, you know, these small practices can be innovating and creating all kinds of new standards and expectations, especially in residential. So what do you think is the biggest opportunity for small practices to lead in sustainability?
I think that alternative construction materials are one of the biggest things that we can bring to market, to bring to practice, to bring to acceptability. For example, the Sagaponic Modern Barn House that you'll see on my website. For that project, we really didn't use any traditional building systems. The basement system was a prefabricated panel system that we installed in 5 below 0 degree weather in the middle of winter on top of a gravel footing that was poured on the sand as a base, the whole base. And then we put 4 inches of rigid insulation on top of that, put the walls on, which came pre-insulated to R21. And then we put R13 on the channels on the inside of it. So we had well over R44 or 45 in the basement walls alone. So
well, I'm sorry, can you explain what those stand for, those R numbers?
Oh, sure. An R value is a rating that's given to anything where thermal energy passes, like a wall system. A wall is typically built out of wood studs, some sheathing on the outside, shingles or whatever coating on that, and then on the inside there's sheetrock or some other kind of wall covering, and the insulation that goes between it. The typical R value for a house might be R20 or 21, that includes all of those components. We kind of shoot for trying to double that. So there's different ways to do that. And some of the best ways are using alternative methods like these panels that I'm talking about. That's for the basement, and if I could remember the name of them, it'll come to me in a moment. The exterior walls and the roof were made of a product called SIPs, which means structural insulated panels. Those were 4 foot wide by 10 foot high panels, and those came on a big truck. We had not a large crane, but a crane that came and lifted them up, installed them over a kind of robust timber frame that we built out of yet another very innovative material called paralams. But these SIPs panels were all installed, they interlocked together, and they come R40, very thick 6-inch panels. They had a magnesium oxide finish on the inside, and I think the outside as well. The outside we covered with stucco, and the inside we simply coated with spackle, just like you would sheetrock. So in terms of the process, it was very simple. Lots of labor were saved. Lots of different trades were saved by having this one panel that could be the structure, it was the insulation, it was the interior finish, and the baseline for the exterior finish. Those kinds of materials that reduce the amount of labor needed are all really important when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah. Well, it almost seems like these kind of vernacular nods and these kind of reuse challenges that you're faced with are like propelling more innovation out of your firm?
I think they are, yeah. Yeah, another project we did using another product, a different product called insulated concrete forms.
Okay.
ICF. Insulated concrete forms are like a little bit like Lego blocks, but they're hollow.
Right.
If you can imagine a Lego block that's 16 inches long, like a concrete block, it's 10 or 12 inches deep, depending on what you do with it. And the lengths can come up to 4 feet. So they're just like stacking up Lego blocks. They fit together in the same sort of way. They have little buttons and female parts that fit together. You stack them all up. You put some steel rebar in there on the way, and they have receivers for them, for the rebar, so that everything fits in there without having to wire it too much. So pretty much one guy can do a lot of this work. We use this product on the Hampton Maid Motel, an award-winning project that added 8 units to a very old family motel right here in Hampton Bays. And that product is an amazingly insulative product that will last for hundreds of years. Those little buildings will be there for 200 years easy.
Huh. Wow.
And we did the same thing on the roof there. Those roofs are just timbers laid across the top in a shed style with SIPs panels on top of them.
Okay.
Very simple labor. Easy labor, not labor, the opposite of labor intensive.
Sure. So what do you think is one like overlooked or undervalued technology that you think more architects should be using right now?
Well, AI is the word of the moment. And I guess it's both scary and necessary at the same time. A lot of people are kind of shy away from AI and don't know what it is or understand it, and yet most of us use it on our phones every day. We look up something on Google, that's AI. It may not be talking to us, but that's just a matter of knowing how to make it do that.
Yeah.
So I think technology and the way we use technology has already changed the way I work immensely, from hand drawings, the way we used to make them, and overlay sketches and hand sketches, and then go to the drawing board and do them in hard line and overlay layers on top of that. Now we do that all on the computer. I sometimes do a hand sketch real quick to show a client just a shape or form, but everything I do now is 3D on the computer. And it's getting more and more automated to the point where I can ask for things to be done that get done. The computer drawing CAD programs that I use one called Vectorworks, which is very similar to probably the most popular one that's named Revit.
Yeah.
An outgrowth of AutoCAD. These programs now are so sophisticated that they have everything plugged into them, including what they call the ergos of every product that you put into a building, so that if you're savvy enough to use the program properly, as you begin to design your wall system, your construction system, that what I was talking about before, that exterior sheathing, the studs, the insulation, the interior, as you begin to do that, all you have to do is define that ergos for each material. And it comes up with an environmental factor for you, an energy factor. So
are you able to kind of simulate the efficiency before you build it?
Yes. Truthfully, I'm not as good at it as I could be, and sometimes I hire energy modeling companies if it's a bigger project. But yeah, you can, and it's getting easier and easier to do that.
Well, I mean, hey, you can always call me up and I can deliver a Vectorworks model to you of any building. I mean, that's another form of automation that didn't exist a while ago.
Yeah, LiDAR scans are something that I use all the time, and I'm glad we've connected. I can't wait to work together on my next project.
Great. Well, that's great.
That's true. I'm really excited about doing that. I've used some of your competitors, and I love the whole concept of it, because a scan can do in minutes what took me days to do, and it does it way, way, way more accurately than I ever could. I'm a human being. I don't do everything without mistakes. I do make mistakes, and so does every other human. And so do the people who work the LiDAR scans. But in general, I'm telling you that this is the best way to go to get any kind of an existing condition set of drawings. LiDAR scan is the way to go.
Yeah, well, it's, I find a lot of more old school architects like yourself sometimes confuse what they call living the building with doing the existing conditions work. Those two things don't need to be the same, right? You can measure and model the building, and the architect can still spend as much time as they want there and live the building and feel the building as well. How are you using AI? Are you integrating it all in your firm, or are you just using it more kind of like on a personal communications level?
A little bit of both. I've used a little bit of Architect GPT, which is a kind of design assistant that will help you look at different options for architectural features, a building or a room or a group of rooms, something like that. I've done a little bit of that. I've also done quite a bit of 3D modeling myself. Vectorworks has a sort of sidekick program called Twin Motion. That's a 3D rendering program that I've used and done some really interesting kind of presentations of ideas with that service. Yeah. And it's coming to the point where I don't think that architects and contractors will use paper anymore at all. I think we're really even there now, where the drawings are all done on a computer. Some municipalities allow you to submit them electronically. My municipalities here on Long Island aren't there yet, but it's coming. They're working on it. In the meantime, they've become a dysfunctional mess with plan review and the time it takes to do that. But it's all coming to an electronic setup. And I'm not sure how my colleagues that I know in my local AIA chapter, quite a few of them still draft by hand. They don't use a computer at all. I don't know how they're going to deal with it when it becomes mandatory to submit your project online digitally. But that's happening. The interface between the architect and the contractor in the field is changing every day. Most often when I go to a larger project, the contractors and the subs are looking at their iPads with the drawings on their iPads. There's no more paper.
Right. Yeah, and I would imagine that, a lot of the kind of environmental and regulatory environment is very thick out there in the Hamptons. I mean, I imagine there's much more than usual. There's a lot of attention placed upon all kinds of regulations, environmental codes, and things like that. And so I mean, I've spoken to some other architects who are saying that, they're really hoping that AI can help them to kind of model that regulatory environment to sort of like help them to understand their constraints better.
I think we have the opportunity with AI to remove some of the emotion and subjectivity that I find in these review boards, because the AI entity can understand the code very, very quickly and come back with an answer to a question for example, at an architectural review board meeting, where the board members themselves may have some emotional connection to a site or the building that's being renovated, and don't like what they see because grandma used to take them there for cookies, and now it's going to look different, and they're upset about that. But the bot won't do that.
Right.
The bot will just look at the facts and say, yeah, this is allowed by code or this is not.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Where you are, it's definitely, the sentimentality of, those areas. People have been coming here for their whole lifetime. Just like I'm on a vineyard, I've been coming here my whole lifetime, and I drive around and everything pretty much looks the same. I just watched Jaws. It's 50 years old, and like it basically looks exactly the same as it does now. I'm sure that a lot of these buildings have been modified in endless kinds of ways, but you never know it. It all looks pretty much as it did.
Yeah, it's always a battle, and a battle of wits and aesthetics in the Hamptons.
Yeah.
And there's always people on both sides. And then there's the environmentalists and the conservation boards.
Sure.
It becomes kind of interesting.
Well, you seem like a pretty unique navigator of all those different factors. And it's great to see how like innovative and hands-on you are. It's really interesting to see how, you've just kept evolving throughout 30 years. I mean, you've got such an interesting perspective on, 30 years of evolution of all this sustainability technology. If you could redesign your earliest sustainable project today, the systems knowledge you have now, what would you change? What would you do differently?
There are better insulation techniques available now, rigid insulation products that go on the outside of the house that act as both sheathing and insulation. I think that's one building technology that could have been employed in the past. It just wasn't available then. Other things like those structural insulated panels and SIPs and ICF, the insulated concrete forms, those kinds of things weren't around when I first started this stuff. So when I see them, I get very, very excited about it.
Sure. But I mean, at the same time, I would imagine a big part of your pitch is that, you're going to build or adapt a building and it's going to have real long-term sustainability 10, 20, 50 years from now, right? So it's about projecting out into the future.
True. Very true.
So how do you prepare your designs to remain relevant in 10 or 20 years?
I ask my clients how long they want their building to last. If it's a residential client, do you want to leave this home to your kids? Are you going to sell it in 5 years when the kids go to college? Is it about the investment? Is it about your legacy? Is it about sustainability? Where are your key points? And that's kind of how we start the design process. And there's certainly the big difference in the design of a building that where the owner wants it to last so his grandchildren can use it, to a building where the owner wants to turn it over in a few years and make his profit and move on.
Sure.
And there's more of those people, I think, than there are of the legacy types.
Right.
But it's those legacy type people that I'm more interested in working with. They're
I would imagine there's a lot more of those legacy types in the Hamptons than there are in the rest of the country.
I used to think so, but I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, there's old money and old families here, but there's a lot of people that come and go and chuck and jive and fancy footwork and move here and move on.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's churning and burning seems to be the currency of the day here. So you've been in practice for 30 years, over 30 years, and
more like 50.
Okay, you've had your own firm for how long?
Since 1988. So that's that'll be 40 years and 3 more. And then before that, I was working in the trades for 6 years, and I graduated.
With that kind of perspective, I mean, and obviously you're really engaged in trying all kinds of new things. And so how is your definition of architectural relevance kind of changed over those 40, 50 years?
Oh, when I started, I had aspirations to be a well-known architect.
Yeah.
Not Frank Lloyd Wright, but I wanted to make a name for myself, and I wanted to develop a style that I learned on the West Coast and is kind of rare on the East Coast, which is a California craftsman style. It's a very tactile, soft kind of style of architecture where everything feels good. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what I'm after. I'm certainly not a famous architect, and no, there's not much chance of that anymore. But all of my buildings, the details of using them are always easy and feel good. The handrails feel good. The steps feel good. The kitchen countertops feel good. One of the most important school projects I ever got was to design a house for a blind person.
Mm-hmm.
And that really had a huge impact on me because I actually put a mask over my face, a blindfold.
Wow.
A number of times during the day and walked around my own house as well as stores and going in and out of stores, just to feel the world, what it feels like not to be able to see it. Yeah. And how important it is when you touch something to know what it's connected to and where it goes.
Yep.
So that's what I do. I try and build that sort of tactile experience into every project.
If there's one lament I've heard from almost every guest I've ever had on this show, it's the sort of lament of the Instagramification of our culture and the overemphasis on, visual impact, as opposed to all the other senses and experiences that one has in a building. So Ric, practicing forward, what does that mean for you? How do you see your firm evolving in the next 5-10 years?
Well, I think it's only going to last 5 or 10 more years to begin with. I'm 74 now, and I've had employees most of my career. Now I'm working on my own. I have freelancers when I need them for my construction documents, and I have some 3D imaging freelancers that I use. So I have a kind of onboard team that I don't need to have in my office and don't need to pay a salary and medical insurance for. So that part of me is kind of retired, and I feel great about that. I'm still working full time, maybe not the 60 or 70 hours I used to work, but I'm putting in full 40-hour weeks. Yep. And I love it. So I like doing that, and I hope to be able to do that more, with a little bit more discretion of the clients and projects I take on going forward.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think you've certainly made quite a mark on the area you live in the Hamptons, and really interesting to see kind of how all this sort of adaptive reuse sustainability is happening out there. I really thank you so much for joining us today, Ric. Thanks for sharing.
You're very welcome, and I hope your listeners get something out of it, and I hope they consider Scan to Plan too, because I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, fantastic! I appreciate it. So once again, this is our guest, Ric Stott. His website is stottarchitecture.com, and have a look, and you can see some examples of some of these approaches, technologies, and thoughts that Ric has been talking about. And so glad to join you today, Ric, and have a great day.
You do the same, Owen.
All right.
Okay.
Be well. Cheers.